Welcome to Anther Dish, the show about food, culture, and identity. I'm your host, Dr. Sarah Dugnan. Cultural appropriation of food from other cultures and countries is by no means a new phenomenon, but how it sneaks into bland Western recipes is increasingly tied to wellness culture in the last 5 to 10 years. Matcha, ube, and pandan are used as trends, but there's so much more important history and traditional practices that are interwoven with the stories of these ingredients. My guest today, Lieu, is a Vietnamese Chinese cookbook author and is here today to share more about how she's challenging this through her new cookbook, 108 Asian Cookies, Not Too Sweet Treats from a Third Culture Kitchen. Kat is the founder of the popular online community Subtle Asian Baking and the author of the best-selling cookbook Modern Asian Baking at Home, as well as 2 other cookbooks. Kat brings a third culture approach to Asian baking and cooking by blending Asian ingredients with Western techniques. They are also an activist raising thousands of dollars for charities and causes that are important to them. This year alone, she raised over $10,000 for charity selling cookies through Instagram stories. In today's episode, Kat shares how she approached 108 Asian Cookies as a cookbook that breaks down barriers, being the first ever Asian-themed cookie cookbook. The cookbook incorporates a wide array of Asian ingredients, more playful ones such as matcha, black sesame cookies, pandan, ube, as well as more savory and spicy cookies that feature fish sauce, MSG, miso, soy sauce, and gochujang. Our conversation looks at how Kat has found healing through baking during challenging life moments, how their third culture identity infuses creativity into her kitchen experience, and the importance of challenging misrepresentation in Asian ingredients through celebration of their culinary adaptations in cookies and the global community that this can shape. Here's my conversation with Kat. All right, welcome to the show, Kat. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing well. I'm so excited to chat with you and get to know you after looking through your beautiful new cookbook. But for those that aren't familiar with you, do you mind sharing a little bit of background about who you are, where you're coming in from today, and the type of work that you do?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Kat Lieu. I was born in Montreal. I was a doctor of physical therapy for 13 years of my life. And then around 2020, I decided to make a pivot into the food world. And 2021, I authored my very first cookbook, Modern Asian Baking at Home. And then in the next 3 years, I've authored 2 more. So now I'm coming out with my third cookbook, 108 Asian Cookies. In my spare time now, I do love to play video games, but I am a full-time food writer. So I write for multiple outlets such as Simply Recipes and Tasting Table and Parade.com. And right now I'm just doing a lot of activism, just helping out with the world, with the state of the world and things like that. And still running my group called Subtle Asian Baking.
Amazing. And so I'm really curious about your pivot into baking because that's something that you tackle through the book as well, is that, you know, in reading it, the importance of family is really clear across, you know, even the title, having the number 108 in it, the types of tools that you used in your kitchen as you're starting out in baking. And so I'm curious if you can speak a little bit to some of the lessons that baking cookies provided during, you know, career transitions, burnout, grief, other challenging periods during that time for you.
Yeah, 2020 was just so challenging for like everyone because it was the height of COVID time. I unfortunately lost my father around that time. So I started my group Subtle Asian Baking May 2020. I said goodbye to my dad July 2020. And I really needed time to focus on myself and to grieve and to mourn. You know, grieving does not get better over time, but you do find outlets where you could release that pain and, you know, remember your father and so forth. So in the kitchen, back at home, so I spent some time with my dad back in New York City. Now I'm back at home in Renton, Washington. I was in my kitchen chatting with my grandma from Canada, my grandma who is his mother. And she's like, you know, get into baking, start cooking more. And I had her Sunbeam mixer that was from the 90s.
Awesome.
In my garage. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to use it. I'm going to make banana breads. I'm going to make cookies. I'm going to learn how to make her chiffon cakes better. And I just got into this groove and baking just became this healing journey. And I realized something about myself. I also nurture my inner child in the kitchen because I'm able to be so creative with my flavors and the ingredients and explore everything that I love. So adding fish sauce into a cookie, adding Japanese whiskey, adding miso, adding matcha, MSG, all these amazing things that's already in my pantry, now translated into a cookie, just healed so much of me and gave me such a catalyst to be so creative again because 13 years in healthcare as a physical therapist, not really my career of choice. something my parents had chosen for me. I felt that after my father passed away, I kind of got this approval to now dream.
Mm.
Because, like, when he passed away, I didn't know what his dreams were, other than to just build up his family. Did he have his own personal dreams, his own personal goals? I knew none of that. So I felt with that final breath that he gave, and I watched that, and I was like, it's a release for him and a release on me too to now follow my dreams so I can fulfill whatever it is that I want to fulfill. And in part, it also helps him fulfill his dreams because he lifted me to this point, right? So yeah, baking has been quite a journey for me, and I never want it to end.
I love that. And it really resonated with me. I also do a lot of grief baking myself, and I find that like tactile component to it is so incredibly healing. So your book really speaks to that as well, and I appreciate the messaging with that. And you spoke to how you're able to really tap into a creativity that you couldn't necessarily before. So I'm curious if you can explore, you speak a lot about third culture identities, and especially when you discuss some of your earlier baking forays in your kitchen. How did those speak to your experiences with third culture identity?
But being a third culture kid means that you celebrate in October, Mid-Autumn Festival. So you have mooncakes with your family, right? My family is Chinese Vietnamese by background. My son and husband are Filipino by heritage and background. You get to translate all of those beautiful ingredients, inspirations into your kitchen. So if we're making milk bread, it could be an ube milk bread to give homage to my son and husband's Filipino side. And Mid-Autumn Festival now looks very different from how my ancestors in China celebrated, very different from how I celebrated as a child. Yesterday, we went to a pumpkin patch to grab stuff for Halloween. We had sushi for dinner instead of a traditional big Chinese banquet dinner with big families. Because honestly, none of my family's here anymore. They're all back in New York City. And at nighttime, we still had a mooncake while we were viewing the big, beautiful full moon, but we're not giving blessings to the heavens for a good harvest because we're no longer farmers. But
Right.
we still bring all those beautiful traditions to our household. So our mooncakes, instead of being very traditional mooncakes that are sold now for almost $100 a box,
Wow.
I'm making these gluten-free vegan ones that I can share with the world, and I'm steaming them and they're easy. Or like my friend who, instead of making mooncakes or buying them for her children who doesn't really appreciate them, she used the mooncake stamps to make cookies. And we were talking about how, oh, we can crush in some Oreos, or we can crush in whatever cookies they like to put into those cookie stamps. We could add in egg yolks, salted egg yolks, and so forth. We're really taking everything that we love from multiple cultures and blending that all into the kitchen.
I love that. And it's interesting too, because I think, how you celebrate that with your current family, and the transition between how you celebrated it really speaks to that ongoing shift and adaptation as you move through life into different phases of life, different parts of family as well.
Yeah, I want to add that there's a bit of grieving our ancestral roots because things are so different now, but it's okay because we don't live in China right now. We don't live in the Philippines. Our family's not all over. Life is very digital now, and it's okay to build these new traditions. I mean, there's mourning and grief of the loss of the old traditions, but some of it doesn't apply anymore. Mid-Autumn Festival was for, farmers all over the world all over China to celebrate their harvest, right? Their crops. And also for them to remember their families who are far away and they're all under one moon. So that still translates, despite the times have changed, right? We're still all under that one moon. And it's okay for these things to change. And I tell my son, it's okay for us to have our own new traditions. Like every Halloween, we will celebrate going to a haunted chocolate factory in Seattle.
Oh,
We
cool.
love it. Yeah, and we'll still keep doing these things. We'll still have Mid-Autumn Festival. We'll look at the moon. We'll still eat mooncakes, right? And it's okay for us to evolve and change a little bit.
That's a really important message, and I think that's something, that balance of grief and evolution is definitely a fine one to balance. I appreciate your work in navigating that for your son as well, because I know even with my own daughter, we're Irish on one side and she's Polish on the other, and it takes some time to get to that point of, oh, okay, we can reestablish or we can establish new traditions and they don't necessarily have to look the same, but still honor that original intent too. So that kind of reminds me of a line that you have in the cookbook that I thought was super powerful, where you're talking about cookies as shapeshifters and storytellers. And can you speak a little bit more to the role that you see cookies playing, particularly in challenging Western media approaches to flattening or trending some of the ingredients in the Asian diaspora?
I feel that this cookie cookbook is going to be so powerful. First of all, it's history in the making. It's the very first one out there that's all Asian inspired cookies from a third culture kitchen and the Asian diaspora. It really changes perceptions on baking because just a few years ago, and it's still up on YouTube right now, Paul Hollywood goes into a Japanese bakery in Japan and he's shocked to see that Japanese people actually baked.
Mm.
He even said, I thought predominantly that these folks are a rice culture, not bread culture. So there's a lot of misperceptions still out there about Asian culture and what Asians eat, what we bake, what we cook, what we make. And a lot of the times there's a lot of trendiness. So at first people think matcha was disgusting, grassy. And now there's a shortage because there's just so much love for it.
Yeah.
There's like this huge demand for matcha that even people in Japan now no longer have access to it. And it's become so expensive. Like someone was saying they have a $300 tin of matcha.
Wow.
Right. So we have to be a little bit more balanced. We can't take something from someone else's culture and drive it up to the point of just pure profitability because it's so popular without respecting where it comes from or respecting the culture behind it. I do a lot of research on like MSG and xenophobia and racism and all of that. Where it stems from was from 1968 when the New England Journal of Medicine published a letter that popularized the term called Chinese restaurant syndrome. Starting from that point forward, you get a lot of this perception that Chinese food, seed oils, food from China is dirty, lowly, disgusting, inferior. I want to change that perception. Because when you see food from a culture as bad, you also see the people, unfortunately. And it's still that kind of misperceptions in 2025 that I want to change in the food world. Instead of these cookies and ingredients being exotic, strange, or unique,
Yeah.
or something that's worth exploring, but trending upwards to a point where it's so appropriated. I want it to be celebrated, appreciated, loved, and I want people to say like, "Oh my gosh, that's so cool, matcha pandan amaretti," instead of calling it a moldy cookie. I get a lot of that. Like when I make black sesame creations, people say that looks like cement, that looks like lint, or I make a colorful cookie with like purely natural ingredients like butterfly pea flour, ube powder, matcha. I'm like, that looks like a peachy dish. I want more appreciation versus the yuckification of these ingredients and flavors. So I think this is what my book is trying to achieve and what I've been trying to achieve in the food world.
Oh, and it knocks it out of the park. It's such a powerful display of how rooted these ingredients are in your storytelling and your craft. And I'm curious too, where you're using very natural ingredients to color your food and create art out of it as well, where you get online backlash for that compared to, these hyper Western concerns around health and like what's in your food. It strikes me as very disconnected from what you're doing and from that end goal as well.
Exactly. I had a recent review of an early review of the book that said that the cookies are too colorful and the flavors are a little too Asian for a Western palate. And then someone else responded and showed me a Betty Crocker cookie book. And it's a rainbow of colors, but it's all from dyes. So it's not that it's unacceptable. I think when we tie the word Asian to something, then it's perceived as something other and foreign. I feel we still have a long ways to go in America and Western culture where we accept Asian Americans as part of the culture of America versus us being someone other. And I do feel that with my book, it has some of that backlash because people do feel that it's more strange or different. They've asked me why I included the word Asian in it. They're sometimes people are a little upset. Like, why not just 108 cookies? It's like, then it wouldn't be the book that I wanted it to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And that message is very, very clear and strong in that. And, it got me thinking too about I've been thinking a lot about like Canadian food and how there's this common refrain of like there is no such thing as Canadian food. But I think it's so grounded in immigrant cooking in different urban and suburban neighborhoods. And, I think particularly around Chinese cooking in Canada, like that is such a backbone to a lot of Canadian dishes and Canadian flavors. So again, it comes as like this disconnect of Chinese and Vietnamese cooking has so much infused into like how we live our day-to-day lives, but it's not getting that respect within your cookbook as well.
It's unfortunate.
So I wanted to talk a little bit too about, I first kind of came across your page because I saw the video of you and your mom doing a promotional video for the cookbook. And I'm curious if you can speak a bit to that experience and your broader experience of proposing the cookbook and publishing it, because it struck me that there's additional challenges and barriers that you face that like white colleagues did not necessarily face as well.
And so my mom has been my hugest fan, which is quite ironic because she always wanted to make me into a doctor or someone who's successful in the health field or a lawyer or finance. And she always tells me, my friend's making all this money as this and this and this, right?
Right.
Funny story. After I graduated as a doctor of physical therapy, she looked at a Chinese newspaper and she said, did you know that physical therapists can be doctors too? And I'm like, what degree do you think I got?
Gosh.
But now she is such a huge fan. She like loves being on camera. She loves like doing marketing and so forth. I had her on camera because of that experience where I reached out to a PR company just months ago, did a great campaign for one of my friends. And they charged me months later over $2,000 more than my friend per month, which translated to about $36,000 over 6 months, a
Wow.
budget that an author does not have, especially when we get an advance that's split into 3 parts. So I'm still waiting on my final part of the advance. I've been having to do a lot of side work, freelance writing, things for brands, for using my platforms to work for brands. It hasn't been the easiest journey, but it was quite easy to, one, get my literary agent from a proposal. Two, the book got 6 bids during an auction, and I went with my favorite publisher. But I see a bit of a lack of enthusiasm now with the media, which does not translate to the enthusiasm that the book market had when they auctioned for my book. It was huge. And I could only attribute it to the climate right now, this anti-diversity climate. And I don't have proof for it, but I feel it. I feel it. It was very easy to get the book deal, but the marketing piece has been quite difficult, like getting on a best fall book list, getting PR to represent. However, my publisher has been so supportive, which is amazing because they believe in this book. They believe in me. They've booked my book tours. They've booked my media campaigns. They've sent out PR boxes. So I do see that they value me as an author, which makes me feel very, very good. Because as someone who has a marginalized voice, I never expected this much of a lift from my publisher. So I'm very appreciative. It shows that there's value in my voice. There's value in my book. I have no doubt that this will win awards. It's just a little slow out of the gate right now. So I also appreciate you for having me on today. So
Oh my
thank you,
gosh.
Sarah.
Yeah, of course. Anytime. As soon as I saw your story and your book, I was just immediately captivated. And, the artistry struck me immediately. Like looking through your page, it's just beautiful creations that I couldn't possibly ever dream up. So it's just like pure joy to see what you're able to create in the kitchen as well.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So I wanted to chat a little bit too about how you incorporated your communities that you've built online and in real life into your cookbook too. I thought that was interesting. And I know you've got a big online global community through Subtle Asian Baking. You also spoke a little bit to like how you shared recipe tests with your neighbors. So can you speak a bit to how those communities shaped some of the recipes in your book as well?
I feel that People have told me a lot that when they read the book and the head notes, they feel represented in my stories. They feel seen and visible in this book. And that is because it is built on community. So I have been inspired by a lot of my subtle Asian baking members. Remember, I didn't start baking my first cookie from scratch until 2020 was the
Wow.
first time I made a cookie from scratch. And it's the matcha monsters in this book in 108 Asian cookies. So I want to also give a platform and amplification for people whose voices may never be heard. So there's my grandma who passed away last year. Her story would not be heard unless I write about it. There's Angie's grandma who she made a cookie for that reminds her of their time together and their Korean heritage. So I shared her recipe in the book. There's Laura who bakes cookies. She's also from a third culture upbringing, and she talks about baking Christmas cookies as a child and now translated to baking these same cookies with her children and for her children. There's also Sharon, who's a moderator of Subtle Asian Baking, who shares her stories of how her mother-in-law goes to Taiwan and brings back these amazing cookies that maybe Sharon could not have tried or tried herself, but she's able to recreate them in her own kitchen and bring a slice of Taiwan back into her kitchen. So yes, this book is a lot about community, about, marginalized voices not being heard, about representation and how much that matters, and just giving kudos back to those who inspired me. I mean, this is like a spell book, but it does take a whole community to make these spells, right? So I'm really, really excited to share this and other people's stories as well. And you'll see that in a few of the recipes in the book.
Yeah, it shines through, and I think it's such an important element to the mission that you're building through this cookbook too. I have one last question for you because I'd be remiss if we didn't touch on the Dreams of Montreal Nanaimo bars as a Canadian. So do you mind sharing a bit of the story behind how you came to create these Nanaimo bars and what they represent in your experiences with Montreal and Brooklyn as well?
Yeah, I was born in Montreal a long time ago, and we moved to Brooklyn around the time I believe I was 2, because I have record of me about being 3 years old, and my dad was actually making a chiffon cake that was a recipe of my grandmother's in a kitchen in Queens. I have a video of that. So I think around 2 years old, we moved to Brooklyn. But every summer, starting from the time I was around 5 years old, I did also spend 6 months with my grandma in Montreal, but I would spend my summers growing up in Montreal with her, and she lived right by the Chinatown. So she was steps away from the Chinatown. It was a great building with the underground mall. And right underneath there, right before we would go up to her apartment, there was a bakery called Au Van Hoot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, with the dude with the mustache. And Grandpa would buy his coffee, a little slice of cake. Sometimes it's carrot cake, sometimes it's the bars. And that would always remind me of the sweetness of Montreal and just being there, because that was not an experience that I had in Coney Island, Brooklyn. Very, very different. I barely left the house in Coney Island. It was not that safe during that time. It was not gentrified like it was now, honestly. I had someone who was 18 years old, was a classmate of mine, and was killed in front of his house just blocks away. So Coney Island was not a safe place for kids, I feel. But Montreal was always dreamy, beautiful, and I would dream of being there with my grandparents and just exploring everything there. The food, the poutines, like I would love to have poutine right now. Even the Costco's had the poutines, amazing. So yeah, I just wanted to write something that was dreamy, and I see that a lot of Canadians actually are like, I love that recipe, and I wanted to give it a spin, so I added pandan into it. But it is from the city. So it is their official recipe that I adapted and changed up a little bit. So it should really resonate with Canadians.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what I wanted it to be. And I was on another podcast, and they were like, how come there's no beaver tail? And I'm like, for the next book.
I love that. Yeah, I'm really curious to bake it to cook it rather, because I also find Nanaimo bars like a little bit too sweet. So that was something that was appealing to me too, is like how you balance out the flavors with it a little bit as well.
Yeah, So you add the miso, you temper the sweetness, you add a bit of the umami, and it becomes like not too sweet and very craveable.
Amazing. I'm excited. Well, thank you so much, Kat, for joining me, for taking the time.
Yeah, of course.
Where can people find you and your work online if they'd like to learn more and purchase your cookbook?
First of all, thank you. This was an amazing, beautiful conversation. And my cookbook is 108 Asian Cookies. You can order it now at modernasianbaking.com/pre-order. You can also check out all of my free recipes on modernasianbaking.com and my Substack called catlou.substack.com. And of course, if you'd like to, I am very active on Threads at catlou and very active on Instagram, also at catlou. And please feel free to join our private group on Facebook called Subtle Asian Baking. I'm also very active there. So, learn some new recipes and have fun.
Amazing. Thank you, Kat.
Thank you.
That was Kat Lieu. I've linked her cookbook, 108 Asian Cookies, as well as her social media in the show notes below if you want to follow along and learn more. You can also find all this at our website at anthodish.com under episodes. Thanks so much for listening to Anthodish Podcast. Subscribe to the show on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you like the show, please rate us on Apple Podcasts to help get the word out. For more Anthodish, you can sign up for my newsletter at sarahdugan.substack.com or find me on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, or Blue Sky at Anthodish Podcast. I always love hearing from you and what you're thinking about food. Music composition for the episode was done by Lucas Verchitsky. Anthodish is produced in partnership with the American Anthropological Association. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week.